morning and welcome to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Happy Thursday. Here it is,
Yes.
getting ready for the big weekend. Weather is kind of cool here in Savannah. Going to be warming up for the weekend, though. Maybe a little rain on Saturday, but don't let that, as we say in the biz, dampen your spirits.
Yes, there's a lot to do around Savannah. I believe that the music festival is still going on.
Music festival is still going on, and we've got some museums that are opening up themselves with no fee.
I know.
So 6 of them.
Yes, we have Georgia State Railroad Museum, Old Fort Jackson, Pinpoint Heritage Museum, but that's Saturday only.
Mm-hmm.
We have the SCAD Museum of Art, Savannah Children's Museum, and Savannah History Museum. So
there you go.
It's a good little chunk of museums that you can take your kiddos to or just go enjoy yourself. So very exciting stuff.
And it was sine die for the Georgia legislature.
Oh, yes, it was. What a busy legislative session we've had. A lot of controversy, a lot of and controversy only because it's things that the media typically doesn't agree with.
Yeah. It's controversial if the media doesn't like it.
Yes.
Yeah, if it was passing a bill that it was okay to kill white people, then they would say, it's okay. A white person bill has been passed, and let's celebrate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, Bill, that there are so many disagreements on things we used to really agree on.
Yeah,
it's kind of bizarre to me that we're looking at how polarized things are and just almost how ridiculous things have gotten.
It is ridiculous sometimes about the lack of the backbone from the GOP. I keep waiting for them to grow a backbone, but doesn't seem to be working very well. School vouchers didn't pass because of lack of GOP votes.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that I think that we maybe. Are you sure that it didn't pass?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, the Georgia lawmakers came closer than ever to establishing a new type of private school voucher program before this year's legislative session came to an end. The Georgia Promise Act would have given parents the right to move the money with the child, but it lacked some GOP votes.
GOP?
Yeah. That's according to the Atlanta Urinal and Constipation.
What is going on up there in Atlanta?
Well, the same way I believe, but somebody was saying, I heard one of the talk show hosts the other day talking about what in Wyoming of all places, the Secretary of State over there was voting against vouchers, who was a Republican, a heavily Republican state, and it was that, have people lost your minds?
Well, and I will say, like, when I was younger, I mean, this is something that's been going on since I was, in grade school and high school, and my parents were against it.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to them about it, and they're like, we were given a lot of, like, information that was incorrect, and we didn't fully understand how it worked and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so my parents are definitely now more pro the voucher system because they said, and they also said if we were still raising kids, they would not be going to public school. Mm-hmm. So there's the other issue, I think, too, if, we should have a choice. We pay the taxes on these schools, and I think it's really hard to get them to change what they're doing. And as a taxpayer, I don't have children in the school, but I expect that taxpayer money goes to...
They still take your money whether you got kids in there or not.
Very true. So I'm invested in kids being educated and being productive when they graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not really a way for us to make a difference in the schools right now. I think it's really difficult. I don't think that we're seeing a lot of change, even here in Chatham County. I mean, they talk a lot, but there's no action being taken, and that's very, very frustrating, especially coming from the business world. There's a corrective action plan, and it happens very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very frustrating that we see, in the government, how this takes so much time. And, we've talked about it several times. What do we do with the public schools when they're not changing? They're not protecting our kids. They're not doing the right things by our children.
They're not getting better. They're getting worse.
Yes, they are. So how do we go about that? And we don't have 5 years for them to have a 5-year plan. We don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, it's not like all the kids, we're going to freeze everybody at a certain grade and we're going to, come up with these plans. These kids, 5 years, these kids are going to be graduating or something like that. So we've lost that particular generation or whatever.
Yeah, I think they're calling it the lost generation. It played a big role in that too.
Mm-hmm, it sure did.
So a lot of problems with public schools. So I'm very disappointed that they couldn't get this done. And this should have been a slam dunk for us.
Yeah, it really should have. and what a shame. But signing off of the Georgia legislative session, Governor Brian Kemp had some remarks on what he has thought about this year's session, and it sounded like this. So there you have it.
Yeah, I'm still really disappointed about the school choice bill.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. Hopefully, hopefully they can get it done next session, which will be next year.
Yeah. So we got to
So-
wait. Got to wait another year for it, unless they have some sort of special session. But that's the only call for urgent needs or things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we've expressed our opinions that this is urgent need.
Yeah, well, and if you guys have legislative interests, let us know what are your top priorities. What
Mhm.
would you like to see happen up in Atlanta? Because they do start planning for that, I believe, August, September. So,
Sure.
It's a good time to start thinking about that and also write your elected officials and let them know.
Yeah, pay attention to these things. And I know you may seem like you're going to be bored to tears by watching lawmakers or something like that, but for goodness sakes, these are people that are running your lives. You vote for these people, at least you're supposed to.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's a big thing too, Bill. I don't think that people realize what happens up at the,
Mhm.
under the gold dome, but then you look up one day and you're like, how did we get regulated, or how did this thing happen?
Exactly.
Well, there were probably lobbyists working on it.
Mhm.
So that's how it happened.
Yeah, there were people that were paying attention. So just remember, if you might not care about politics, but politics cares about you.
Oh, it sure does. It
And,
sure does.
Yeah.
And
That's what we try to tell the young people. Let's say, well, I'm not really political. I'm not really that concerned about what's going on. Well, you better start.
well, and I think that that's the other thing. I think we're seeing a generation that is, number one, they're super hyper polarized, but also there's just a lot of people that are just like, I don't really like to listen to the news. I don't really like to hear what's going on.
Mhm. I just want to be entertained.
Because it's negative. It's negative. Yeah. So yeah, that's part of it. I think that, and I don't necessarily blame them. I would love to live in bliss as well.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not
the
reality.
Big Rock Candy Mountain. Yeah,
It's not reality.
And I think one of the things that we ought to reestablish in schools is debate teams.
I was on debate team. I
Mhm.
loved it. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was a good exercise in also having to debate something that you disagreed with. Ooh, that
Exactly.
was a little rough.
Mhm.
But I think it teaches kids to look at both sides, and I also think it teaches you to think.
I had a debate coach at Groves who said, "All right, now he has for show of hands at a class one day, who's in favor of in favor of capital punishment? Raise their hands. Who's not in favor of capital punishment? They raised their hands. Said, all right, I want each of you to prepare an argument for what you don't believe in. So those of us who were in favor of capital punishment had to come up with an argument on why we were against it, and vice versa.
Well, I think it's good to understand the other side and
It is.
also be able to say, I understand why you feel that way, but this is
Mhm.
why I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But we're all allowed to have our own convictions, right?
Sure.
But I
Exactly.
think being able to have some I don't even know what to call it, like just understanding with the other side. I think that's
The biggest issue was
Yeah.
executing an innocent person was the was the biggest argument we had against the death penalty.
yeah.
If anything like that happens, your stomach should turn.
Yes.
All right,
absolutely.
coming up next.
We have a lot to talk about, especially when it comes to why is the government giving out information on Republicans?
Yeah, but let's just find out. But they're trying to look into it. Republicans are anyway.
Yeah.
Democrats don't care.
No, they don't.
That's next. Get real.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Getting ready for a weekend, and April Fool's Day is Saturday. You may be hearing some strange stories. Look into it before you act upon it. We've had some good ones over the years, and we're going to be talking a little bit later on in the program this morning about some of the great April Fool's jokes of all time.
Yes, pranks are fun.
Yeah,
we need to have a lot more fun. So I hope that you guys are planning something big for Saturday.
Yeah, one of my preview is several years ago, Taco Bell put out a full-page ad in like USA Today or the New York Times that they were purchasing the Liberty Bell and calling it the Taco Liberty Bell. And there was quite the controversy, shall we say.
Oh, brother. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm full of controversy these days. Mm-hmm. And, Matt Gaetz, I'm not going to lie, he's one of my favorites. He, total firebrand, does not care what anyone says. And he's also someone that didn't... Book. Yes. Well, and he did not listen to any of the consultants that told him when he was accused of all these horrible things with underage girls and things like that. Mm-hmm. They were told, you need to do this, this, and this. He didn't do any of that. He did what he thought was right, which he came out and said, I absolutely did not do this. My family's being blackmailed. And guess what? At the end of the day, yes, his reputation, I think, took some hits. However, I do think that he did the right thing, and he came out on top. Yeah,
they even took him off Fox for a while, like a regular, and that went away for a while. He's back to a degree, not a great deal, not in the frequency that he was, but at least they've got him back. And yesterday, he had a lot of fun with an Air Force general about the censorship or about some other things that are going on that shouldn't be going on in the military or elsewhere.
Releasing information that they shouldn't have been releasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So here's the thing.
Didn't get her 4th star.
Well, amazing that there were Republicans.
Yeah.
That they had this information released.
What was that?
Research. They're running for office. They wanted their records, and they asked for them, and they gave them out.
How did the Air Force get involved?
Because they were They were prior military, prior Air Force people that were running for office and gave their personnel to opposition.
That's and you're right. You know, who got fired is a good question. We're still asking who got fired over 9/11.
Yeah, no one.
Exactly.
They all got promoted or moved.
Or do what they call, you know, the lateral promotion.
Mm-hmm. Well, and my issue with this too is I don't care what kind of layers you put in place. The damage is done.
Mm-hmm.
You gave that information out and people can use it. The damage is done. I don't constant attack on people that decide that they're voting Republican or that are conservative or that have certain beliefs. They're the ones that always are the victim of these things. You know, we had the James O'Keefe thing yesterday. Democrats shell money. And guess what? The woman that is over elections in Maryland, all of a sudden she announced that she's retiring in September. Weird.
I'll be darned. And I remind you that we're still looking for the Kerry who served in Vietnam. We still haven't gotten those yet. And a good friend of mine who has since gone on to be with the Lord was one of his commanders in Vietnam and was one of the ones who helped write the book. He was in Navy League with us. He's a retired Navy commander. And he was one of the guys on the Swift boats who helped write Jerome Kersey's book, Unfit for Command, that fortunately kept John Kerry out of the White House. Thank you, God. And he said that Kerry got there, and he said that this guy was there for his own self-aggrandizement, and he was a loose cannon, and he went to the Admiralty, and he said, get that man off my boat. And he was there for 4 months. He got three Purple Hearts and never spent a day in the hospital. So we're still looking for John Kerry's records from the Navy.
He has a D by his name, so we will never see those records.
That's true. So apparently, but he switched parties, and they'd be opened right away.
You're exactly right. So I think that we've got to start pushing back on these people. I don't know what it's going to take, but we no longer can be the silent majority. I mean, we are the majority in this country that are conservative. I mean, you look at a map of how people vote, there's a sea of red with a dots of blue.
Yep.
It is not, we're more conservative than we are liberal. And I think what's interesting too, Bill, is that we agree on most things. I think that the language has really hurt us because they've weaponized it. And I think they've redefined things. It makes things confusing for people. And I also think that we have a generation, if you look at it, the people that will be voting for our presidential candidate in 2024, they are, in 2016, they were 10 years old. They've been raised in this really polarized environment against Donald Trump, the Russia collusion, all of this stuff. And if they don't do their own research, they still believe in Russia collusion. They still believe all of the lies that were told throughout from 2016 on about Donald Trump and about Republicans. So, I mean, that scares me a little bit, Bill.
Hats off to Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas and also a presidential candidate in 2016, for coming out with videos for about Christianity and about religion, but also about Donald Trump. He's got one, and you just pay the shipping, and it is a great way to educate your kids about the great things that Donald Trump did, and how people can look at this and how America was for the 4 years under Trump, as opposed to the little over 2 years we've had from the sack that we have now that doesn't know which end of the stage to walk off, and doesn't know what day it is, and comes down and starts talking about chocolate chip ice cream after 6 people have been slaughtered at a Christian school, and asked if he thinks it was an attack on Christianity, and he didn't know, he didn't think so. And isn't it interesting that when Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, Brittany, asked Merrick Garland, thank God he's not on the Supreme Court, about whether or not they were going to prosecute this as a hate crime, he gave all sorts of answers. Well, we don't know exactly what the motive was or anything else. You don't know what the motive was.
The person left a manifesto.
Yeah,
and they're not.
And why aren't we seeing that?
Well, I do think that there is some security issue with it. I have mixed feelings on that because they're saying within a 2-week period, you want to be very careful because you're going to see some copycat things and you don't want to release too much information. which I understand. But also, the thing that I'm kind of sick of hearing of that you don't hear about those 3 children and the 3 adults that were killed. We're hearing someone was being misgendered. I'm sorry. That person gave up their rights for anything that I care about when they started shooting children.
The New York Times apologized yesterday for misgendering the murderer. Oh, please.
No, that person does not have any rights. I'm sorry.
No, they don't.
You decided that you were going to be a heinous human being and you were going to shoot children. I mean, we're not talking enough about the innocent lives that were killed. And she's a murderer. At the end of the day, we do not treat murderers with kid gloves and say, oh, that poor person. No, you murdered children. You made a decision. For me, I'm done with it, Bill. Like, I am so sick of people making it about the shooter and not about things that...
And then the supposedly the trans community leadership or something teaming up with Antifa this weekend for the Day of Revenge, and they said part of it was going to be firearms training. I thought these people were against guns.
Not unless it's against Christians or people that don't agree with the transgender movement.
Yeah,
it's getting out of hand, Bill, and we've got to stop. We've got to stop validating that this stuff is okay. It is not okay.
It's not.
So
what is okay is that we're going to go to a break.
Yes, I need cool.
And coming up after that,
we're going to be, Marty Makary was with Laura Ingraham last night, and I think he brought up some valid points
about what kind of drugs was this person taking. We need to know that.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
It is Thursday. It is the 30th day of March. One more day to go.
I know, and Saturday will be April Fool's, so that's exciting. Hopefully we can have some fun on that day.
Talk more about that in a few minutes. Meanwhile, something that's not fun is what about this manifesto that this cretin that shot up the school a couple of days ago in Nashville? when are we going to see that? And okay, take out the anything that might be of national security concerns or things of that nature, and let's see the rest of it. But also, what kind of drugs were they taking? And we've said this about from Dylan Klebold and his Confederates in the original original Columbine, the original school shooting disaster, on down, that they were on some sort of psychotropic drugs or something of that nature. What has this woman been on? And she was a woman. What was she on? Marty McCary, distinguished professor of medicine at the Johns Hopkins Medical School, was on with Laura Ingraham on the Ingraham Angle on Fox News last night talking about it. White guy was really sharp, and of course he came out of the slings and arrows of the media and other medical professionals during COVID when he was saying it. When he was one of the outspoken ones, they were even threatening to take away his medical license because he was speaking out against all these worthless vaccines.
Yeah, and we have some listeners this morning. Lizzie says, "Why don't students have the same level of security the Board of Education provides for themselves at every board meeting?" Good point. And our friend Carl Heiss, "The people in charge don't want to show how messed up she was." And then studies indicate that 30 to 40% of transgenders are autistic, and that's from our friend Lizzie Warren. So,
and I thought background checks are supposed to catch all this. That the left seems to love so much to keep legal people from buying guns legally, because she bought 7 of them from 5 different stores. Why wasn't at least one of them? Why wasn't she caught on some of those?
I'm not sure. I don't think that some of this stuff doesn't go on your background. They're not marking this in someone's file, as far as if they're seeking help for an emotional disorder or things like that, because they're validating the illness right now, Bill. And when you do that, you're normalizing it. So the more you normalize this, the more we are going to see people that probably have a mental health disorder be able to purchase guns and maybe behave badly. I mean, I think that we need to give people the help that they need, and I don't think that I think we're just validating people's feelings about this
but it should make you
dysphoria.
very suspicious. I mean, you want to get to the root causes, as the vice president says. You want to get to the root causes of these things. You're not going to get to the root causes if you hide what she was taking, or any of these others, and say, what's the common denominator here?
Well, and Bill, we're putting kids on drugs earlier and earlier.
Oh, I know.
I mean, at 5 years old, you're too hyper. Let's give you a pill to settle you down. No, I'm sorry. Little kids, they are hyper. Like, let them be children.
Uh-huh. I was friends with a family of a young man who had special issues, but they had to give him a pill in the morning so that he would get hungry and eat breakfast. Then they had to give him another pill so he would stop being hungry, and then they had to give him another one to get hungry for lunch, or what, I don't remember what it was, but it was like, we give him this pill to do this, so he won't do this, and then we give him a pill so he will go back to doing this and won't do this. I mean, it was like, this is ridiculous.
Well, and I think that there are other things that you can teach people. I know that some people that I know that are autistic, they teach them like different ways to cope with, like, maybe trying to focus, and like, it's like snapping your fingers, or different things like that I think are, they don't make the pharmaceutical companies any money, but I think it's better for the kids. And I also think that gender dysphoria. Thank you, Carl. But the thing is we're not referring to it as gender dysphoria anymore. I mean, we're not calling it a mental illness, and it is. And we're seeing, I mean, you saw them at the Capitol in Texas, you saw them at the Capitol in Kentucky. If you're anywhere near DC, get out. I think Saturday is going to be a little wild up there. That's where they plan on meeting for this trans revenge that they're planning. And
did you see the head of the DC Washington DC Council saying that there's not a crime problem in Washington D.C.?
Oh, really? Tell that to Rand Paul's
aide
that just got stabbed, I believe, in the head and in the abdomen.
They said, fortunately, he's going to make a full recovery.
But that was in broad daylight. That wasn't at night.
Oh, yeah. This is right on the street in broad daylight that this young man got attacked.
But there's no crime problem. There's nothing wrong up there.
Nothing to see here.
Well, and I think crime has gone up all across the U.S. In the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And, and
skyrocketed.
I will say even in 2020. And I think that there were a lot of people's hands that were tied. And, there were things that we wanted to be done. But, because of the way we're set up, federalism, you kind of depend on the states to do the right things without the federal government stepping in. And I would have loved to see the federal government step in, but that's not how we're set up. But it's been a while since 2020.
Yeah, it has. And the fact that people don't understand this, and the fact that the media doesn't understand it as well, goes all the way back to, I'll go back to the days of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, when they were blaming George Bush for what happened down there. And said, why isn't he going in? Why didn't he send in the National Guard? Well, there is this thing about the 10th Amendment about states' rights. And he could not order National Guard troops into Louisiana or whatever, or into New Orleans, because it had to be done on the state level first. He couldn't just go in, and the news media didn't bother to say that. They just kept blaming him for not sending help at that time. And yet you had a governor who said that, we're looking into this and we're thinking about it. Well, Katrina didn't mark time waiting on the governor to make a decision. And by the way, she didn't run for re-election simply because of that, because it got so bad. And as you know, initially the hurricane didn't do as much damage as they thought it would. But apparently President Bush and Karl Rove snorkeled in and blew the levees so that the floods would come in.
Oh yeah.
So there was, and then it got a lot worse. And the media just continued to blame George Bush for it. And I was like, this is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And we have a couple of comments here. Carl Heiss says, almost 7 in 10 arrests in D.C. are not prosecuted. That's unreal.
Yeah.
And then Lizzie says, Katrina, I read that the drug addicts and alcoholics who could get their fix was a big part of the problem post Katrina.
Mm-hmm. This is, in fact, this is from our legislature that, just had sine die last night or early this morning, that Athens Republican Houston Gaines said people were sick and tired of criminals getting back out on the street after they had been arrested. And he said, a lot of folks seem to be more worried about the folks committing the crimes and not the people who are the victims. Well, Democrats had opposed that because they said the measure saying that a cash bail means only people who can afford it can get out on bond. Those who can't languish in jail until trial. Well, that's a bunch of crap.
Not only that, isn't it based off the crime? I mean, if you're a murderer, yeah, I'm sorry. You should have a higher bond and bail. And I mean, I'm sorry.
And that's why they had bail bondsmen. They get the bail money. It's been working like that for decades, if not a couple of centuries. And yet you had the Democrat. It seems that the Democrats seem to be opposed to everything that has to do with law and order.
Oh, yes. They love the chaos. It really helps them out in a lot of situations. Create the chaos and, you have all these problems to fix, right, Bill?
When they become a victim, though, wonder what will happen then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, April Fool's Day is coming.
I'm excited about it. Yeah. I'm not going to be here to play any pranks on Bill, but I'm excited to maybe play a couple pranks on some friends.
I don't usually play them, but I sure do like to hear about them. We're going to talk to you about some of the classics coming up next.